Welcome back to the Lakers Takes podcast. This is episode 1. I am your host, Edwin Garcia, and today we are going to talk about the Lakers' first preseason game against the Brooklyn Nets. I'll talk about what I'm looking forward to during the preseason, and I'll take a look ahead at what games are coming up this week. Alright, so let's get right into it. The Lakers lost 123-97 against the Brooklyn Nets. Cam Thomas, rookie for the Brooklyn Nets, had himself a game, 21 points, 4 rebounds. He was a plus 17 on the night. And the Lakers had decent performances from a couple of role players. Malik Monk, the Monk propaganda is here. He had 15 points on the night. Wayne Ellington had 11 points. Some of that came late, but he did perform pretty well. And THT had 10 points on the night in the loss, 123-97. Now, one thing you might have noticed, I haven't said the names Kevin Durant, James Harden, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and others like Carmelo Anthony, Trevor Ariza. Why? Well, those players didn't play. We started getting this news Friday afternoon at around 2 p.m. Mike Trudell, Lakers reporter, reported that Westbrook, LeBron, Ariza, and Carmelo were not going to be playing in the preseason opener. They mentioned that it was just managing the preseason schedule. Ariza had a slightly sore ankle, but really it was just because of that. And that Davis would play in the first quarter, which he did, and we're going to get into that in a moment. So that was definitely a bummer. Once we heard that, it was like, okay, well then, we're not going to see the kind of game that we're hoping for. It won't be a finals preview. It'll be Lakers bench versus, will it be stacked Brooklyn? No, at 11:56 on Saturday, we heard from at Notorious OHM, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Joe Harris, Patty Mills, Blake Griffin, and James Johnson all will not play Sunday against the Lakers. So at that point, it was very clear, okay, again, I know it's preseason, and we understand that it's not always going to be, everyone playing their best, and these are big games. We get it, but it was really clear that it's really going to be bench versus bench, and don't expect anything close to a finals preview. They expect bench versus bench, kind of like, the second or third quarter of the first preseason game in the NFL when there are no starters and it's just a bunch of guys who maybe won't even make the team, and you're kind of just watching because you're really excited about the idea of the season starting. So that's kind of what it was, unfortunately. I still think there's a lot to learn and a lot to break down, and we're going to get into it right now. So again, according to the score, this was a very bad game for the Lakers, but if you watched it, it really wasn't. It really didn't get out of hand until the fourth quarter when, the G League Lakers kind of were on the court and they got absolutely destroyed 39-16. They were not ready for that, which is understandable. It's a lot of players that are on training camp deals, two-way contracts. You're not gonna, they're just not ready, and they got cooked in that fourth quarter. So again, the score doesn't really matter. You're more trying to look, especially when you don't have those starters and stars in the game, trying to look at the role players and who can play well. And I think we got a little bit of a preview. Again, it's one game. Let's pump the brakes. I know I yelled out Monk propaganda a few minutes ago, but it is just the first preseason game. So let's take it easy. But again, it's the only data we have, so we might as well take a look at it. And there's some players who played pretty well and some that didn't. I think DJ gave you what he's going to give you. I think you saw some of his best moments and some of his poorest moments in this game. Some of his best moments were when he was grabbing rebounds, when he was contesting shots, when he had a really nice connection with Kent Bazemore where he threw him an oop and he got the bucket and won, and he converted on that. We know he's notorious for struggling with his free throws. He hit his free throws pretty well tonight. He was 5 for 8, so that's really amazing from DeAndre Jordan. You're probably not going to get that very often, so take it when you get it and be happy. And overall, I definitely was happy with that part. But what I wasn't happy with, he had trouble on defense a couple of times. It seemed like he was really struggling out there. He missed some baskets that seemed like, that they were, clear, I don't want to say easy shots, but it just seemed like, he could have converted on it. So he had his ups and downs. He had some moments where, Lakers Twitter was mad at him. But again, that's DeAndre Jordan. I'm not surprised. I'm hoping for, give me 7, 8, 10, 12 minutes, maybe in that first shift in the first quarter, maybe a little bit in the third quarter, / if someone gets in trouble, which we'll talk about Dwight Howard in a moment. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting too much from DeAndre Jordan. He's a player who was on the Brooklyn Nets last year, and he didn't play at all in the playoffs. I think that's not them poorly assessing talent. I think that's kind of the player he is. But again, for regular season, can he give you single digit, double digit minutes and not be terrible? I think you saw today what that could look like on the good end and what that could look like on the bad end. So you be the judge on if you can stomach that. But I think that was a fair assessment of his performance. Kent Bazemore, didn't like how he played. Didn't like much. He had that nice oop. I don't think he was really good defensively. He definitely wasn't good on the offensive side of the ball. He shot 2 for 6, 22 minutes, 5 points, minus 10. Again, I'm not a big plus minus fan, but it does give you a little bit of context of how he played, because a lot of what he was failing at was like the intangibles, like not closing out hard enough, not being able to keep up on fighting off a screen and things of that nature that don't really show up on the stat line, but they show up when you watch the game. And I'm really excited to rewatch this game. This is a few hours after the game's over, but I haven't been able to rewatch it yet. But I'm definitely going to rewatch this game and see what else I find. But I did not like on the first watch really much of anything from Kent Bazemore. I've not been a big fan of the signing, but I did predict he would start. And in fact, I'm gonna humble brag here a little bit. The night before the game, I tweeted out what I thought would be my starting lineup based on who the Lakers had available, and I got it 100% right. So I'm gonna go ahead and give myself, a little pat on the back here. Apologize for that, but yeah, I predicted Kendrick Nunn, Kent Bazemore, THT, AD, and DJ. And the reason why I think Vogel went with Kent Bazemore over some players that maybe people like more is because he's a little more responsible defensively, and Vogel has let it be known, throughout the years that if you're a little bit stronger on the defensive end, he's going to take that over offensive ability. 9 times out of 10, I would say 10 times out of 10. And that was true here in this scenario. That's why I think Kent Bazemore starts. That's why I think unless he plays absolutely terribly, Kent Bazemore will be the opening day starter. I still think that's going to happen. He's going to have to play very, very bad in all his games and then have other shooting guards play very, very good, which I think is possible. But I think that's what's going to happen. Do I think Kent Bazemore will start all year? No, I do not. Because I think eventually Vogel will get off of that. But I expected him to start today. He did. And I expect him to start a few more times. So we'll see what happens. It'll be really interesting when the full roster is up. And now that Vogel has a little bit of data, if that starts to change his mind. Coaches don't change their minds very easily. So we'll see. We don't know the inside workings of his mind. Maybe he just wanted to, give him a shot and see. It's really hard to tell at this point, but I wasn't surprised he started. I wasn't surprised he played bad, and I don't think that means he won't start again. THT, to me, looked kind of like more of last year. We saw some of the brilliance. That dunk he made was incredible when he came off the wing and he was 1 foot inside the semicircle at the free throw line. He just boomed it, and he had such great power and force. But power and force, I think the force was the part that was a little bit rough today. There were some offensive possessions where he just played hero ball, which he was known to do even last year, and it is impressive because sometimes he makes some unbelievable layups in transition where you're like, oh my goodness, how were you able to get to the basket, and how'd you make such a dumb shot, kind of some of those crazy Kobe shots. He does that at the rim, not at the 3-point line or inside the 3-point line, right? But a lot of times there are like head scratching plays and they don't look good. And I think there were a few scenarios today where he really, really tried to force it and it did not work. And he's going to have to lay off of that and be a bit smarter on this roster, on this team. So again, it's preseason, it's game 1, but I did notice that. I didn't see him playing as poorly on defense. Overall, the team's defense was really good, very active, very aggressive. They were switching, they were staying on the ball, they were fighting to play well defensively. They were 100% engaged. Again, kudos to Frank Vogel for always emphasizing defense, and that's been a concern for everyone because of all the offensive changes, all the roster turnover that, this team will beat the Wizards 123 to 117. And again, it's just one game, but it looked like they're at least going to try. Now again, even in this one game, they let them score 123 points. But like I said, that was a fourth quarter, 39 piece. Keep that in mind. There weren't players really on the court who will probably be Lakers in the regular season. Something to keep in mind. But they did give up a lot of points, even though I'm saying that they played pretty solid defense. But yeah, THT has to be better. 3 from 11 from the field, and again, a lot of those shots were just knucklehead shots. He had that nice dunk, but he can be better. It did look good. He was slimmed down. It looked like he felt more comfortable. He's a little bit faster. He was coming off the screens quicker, and he was engaged. But yeah, some of that's gonna have to clean up, especially on a team with championship aspirations, where you're gonna play an important role supposedly on the roster rotation. you're going to have to do the right thing more often than the wrong thing. And I feel like today it was way more of a 60-40 on the right decisions versus the wrong decisions. And it needs to be 80-20 because you still have to execute even if you do make the right decision, whether that's pass or shoot or dribble or whatever the decision is. You still have to execute. That's the other challenge. I think he's literally making bad decisions before we even see what the result is. And sometimes he surprises you. Sometimes he disappoints you. Often he disappoints you, and I saw a bit of that from THT today, so I'm hoping he can clean that up as the preseason goes along and as the season begins. But let's get to the man of the hour, Malik Monk. He was incredible, especially in that second quarter when he went on that 5-0 run himself. He was just doing everything. He started hitting his threes. He started grabbing boards. He made a couple of deflections. He was disruptive on the wing. And he's not even really known for his defense like that, but he was just an agitator and a spark plug for the team. It was absolutely dynamic. And again, he's still dropping his 15 points, and that was really impressive. He was 6 for 12 from the field, shooting 50%. Same from 3 for 6, also 50%, 22 minutes. He was a shining star. Again, 22 minutes, a +3. And again, don't like plus minus that much. I'm not a big fan, but a +3 in a game where you were blown out, that means when you were on the court, things were happening. And he literally had solo runs of just him scoring bucket after bucket. So Lakers Twitter went insane for him. He played pretty well. I don't think you could ask much more from Malik Monk, giving you 15 points in 21 minutes on 50% shooting, a couple rebounds and assists here, a steal there, a block there. It was great. He was really definitely, if there was an MVP or best player on the Lakers on a horrible blowout loss, it would be Malik Monk. So definitely a positive. According to what he did at his time with the Heat, this might actually be possible for him to consistently do. And you do that on a team with LeBron, AD, Melo, that might just be like a super, super luxury that just really overwhelms teams. They got to watch out for Malik Monk, and he's going to be making buckets like this. So we'll see, but he looked great. Wayne Ellington was also respectable. He had 11 points. He hit a couple buckets kind of late in the game, but overall I think his time with the Lakers today was pretty good. It was pretty positive. I liked what I saw enough from Wayne Ellington. Again, given what his normal role would be, I think that was a pretty positive experience. Speaking of experience, the Dwight Howard experience. We got everything that you could dream of from Dwight Howard. He only played 13 minutes. He had 6 fouls. He fouled out. He had a technical foul for saying something that the ref didn't like. He had 6 boards, 11 points in 13 minutes when you foul out. That was incredible. Everyone was laughing because the sequence where he got ejected and everything was a bit ridiculous. He got his 6th foul. They were trying to see the severity of the foul in the review, and then he got a tech for I guess some things that he said that the ref overheard, and he was out the game. And normally in another game that would be an aggravating thing, but he laughed it off. All of Staples Center was laughing. We saw pictures of Russ and LeBron, laughing on the sidelines at how ridiculous it was. He got ejected from a preseason game, or not ejected, but called tech and flagrant and fouling out. And it took the refs 10 minutes to organize all of that madness in a preseason game when it was already blown out. No one was really caring, and it was, a classic referee, drama for no reason that no one was interested in. But overall, I think we know what we're going to get out of Dwight Howard. You're going to get energy. You're going to get aggression. Sometimes it will be negative and we won't be laughing. Sometimes he will foul out or foul too early when he was supposed to be in there to help, and he hurt. Those things are going to happen with Dwight Howard. I think today was a good example of the Dwight Howard experience. He won't always get 6 fouls in 13 minutes. Hopefully, it won't happen that often, and I don't think it will. I'm not really worried about Dwight Howard. We experienced what it's like to have him on the team the way he is now a couple years ago in the bubble season. So we saw what that was like, and I think everyone in Lakers Nation's kind of signed up for that. So we're on board in the Dwight Howard experience, and today was a good example of what that's going to be like. Real quick, going to go over 2 more players. One is Austin Reeves, aka Hillbilly Kobe. I think that nickname he has is hilarious. He played all right. He only had 3 points, but he also had 3 rebounds and 2 assists, and he had a really bad shift. The first time he came in the game, he looked very scared, very tentative. He had some decently open shots, and he passed them up. He didn't even take a shot during his first 4 to 8 minutes of play, and I was like, wow, that was really rough. It looked like he was nervous, which is natural. He's an undrafted rookie from Oklahoma playing for the Lakers. Lakers, that's a lot. So I was hoping he would kind of shake it off at least for this game. That might be too much to ask, but luckily it wasn't. He started hustling. He started diving for balls. He made his little basket there, and I think Lakers Nation was happy with what we got from Hillbilly Kobe. It was pretty good. I'm guessing he'll get more relaxed. He'll be a little bit more comfortable, so he won't have that bad first shift like he did. And who knows how much we're going to see of him. He's a rookie, But, we know the Lakers love developing talent, and they've done a good job assessing talent and developing it properly. So I'm optimistic that Austin Reeves will have a nice little season here. And today was a nice moment midway through the game, late in the game, where it felt like he started getting more comfortable and was being more aggressive. And, of course, last player, the best player who played today in terms of just overall talent, and that's Anthony Davis. He only played the first quarter. He played most of it. He had played 11 minutes. 6 points, 2 from 6 from the field, so kind of pedestrian for him. 2 from 3 from the free throw line. Had a rebound, a board, a steal. So again, only one quarter, but I like the attitude. I like the fact that he wanted to play because he felt like, look, I didn't play at the end of the season. I feel like I have something to give, and I don't want to even miss now. Let's go. Let's start. I don't want to sit. Let's get this started. And I like that attitude. I actually do like it. I think it's a good sign if he even just wanted to send the message of, I'm not missing stuff. Even this small game that everyone says is totally cool for me to miss. No, I'm going to play, and I'm going to play at least the first quarter, and then, okay, we'll take me out of there. So I like that from him. He seemed fine. Again, it was so early in such little time with so many bench players and things of that nature that, you're not going to really learn much. And besides, we already know everything we need to know about AD. He's an all-star superstar, and it's just a question of how super is he? Is he going to be top 20, top 15, top 10, top 5? All those things are possible. It just depends on, again, what kind of superstar we're going to get. But we know we have a superstar. We know he's amazing. So you're not really going to see much in this game from him or learn much from him. You've watched him play for years at this point, so there isn't really much to learn. Again, his groin strain wasn't going to be an issue. That injury was a annoying one and I'm sure a painful one, but it's not one that kind of repeats or really stays with you like something serious like an ACL tear or something of that nature. So if you were worried about how he'll look coming off the injury, it's not that kind of injury. So he's totally healthy, totally fine. I'm sure he's been 100% recuperated for months at this point. It was just when he got that injury, it's the middle of a playoff series, there is not time to recuperate from it, and that was the problem. But now he's 100% healthy. I'm absolutely sure of it, and he didn't look like he was affected at all or limited in any way besides the minutes restriction, which was, hey, just play the first quarter and let's get you out of here because we're not really doing that. One thing of note is I love the screens with him and THT. They really didn't work too well. They weren't super effective, but I can tell that that's going to be a promising thing, and I'm excited about seeing more of those screens. When AD joined the Lakers, I thought him and LeBron would screen a lot, and they really never did. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So seeing him do that with THT a lot consistently, at least from the first game, I'm thinking, okay, are we going to see a lot more of that? A lot more screens between THT and AD where they're just trying to get a mismatch, get an advantage, get an opening? Where maybe scenarios where THT can pull up for a 3 or dish it to AD, rolling to the rim, things of that nature. So I was excited about that. I think there's a lot of promise and potential there, even if it didn't, like I say, really work out early in that first quarter. All right, so that's the recap of the first game of the preseason. It was exciting. I feel more optimistic despite the score because I feel like we got some really good things from the bench players, right? I think Monk played well. Nunn I didn't talk about, but he had a pretty solid game. Ellington was pretty good. AD is going to be just fine, and we'll see what happens with how good THT is going to be and what's up with the other players who maybe didn't play that great. Again, it's just one game, so I feel optimistic. I saw some things I was excited about, and everyone's healthy. Again, that's one of the keys. So let's talk about them. What is the point of the preseason? So many people say, oh, it doesn't matter, who cares, whatever. But what's the point? Why do we have these games besides money? What can we get out of them? What can we learn from them? So I want to talk a little bit about how my philosophy is, especially for the Lakers this year. I think the preseason depends on every team, how much it's going to matter. And for the Lakers this year, I think it's going to matter a lot. There are other years where I thought, okay, we don't really need this. It's just extra whatever, right? But this year, again, only 3 players returned from last year's roster. That's a lot of turnover. The players that joined the team now are not some young developing players. They're superstars. They're all-stars. They're Hall of Famers. They're players with egos, players with, really outgoing personalities that maybe could not clash well and things of that nature. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to figure out. I'll start with just some simple questions. Who's the starting shooting guard of the Lakers? Who's their small forward? If AD's at the 5, who's the starting power forward? And I feel like if we all start to ask those questions and answer them, we're going to get a lot of different answers. And that's because we don't know, because we haven't seen a lot of these players play, and a lot of them are kind of even in terms of ability at this point, and you kind of feel like, oh, I can go either or. And, then I ask you, well, if you can go either or, do you have a good option? Do you know which one's the better option? These are things that have to be figured out. And I think this preseason and training camp, of course, is absolutely crucial to figuring that out. For Vogel to assess the talent and say, you know what? Melo has to start. Or, you know what? I like Melo off the bench. Or Trevor Ariza can't give me enough to start. He has to play on the bench. He's not where I thought he was, things of that nature. I'm just making up, kind of scenarios. I'm not saying those things are true, but some of those things will be true once we actually start seeing more data, and that's where you get the data. You get the data from training camp, from watching them day in and day out, and you get that data and that information from watching them play against other players, from watching them in a little bit closer to game speed with their teammates and how they mesh, and what you want out of your bench, all those things. So that's why I think this preseason 100% matters for the Lakers, because there's just so much turnover. And when you're trying to go from first round exit to I overhauled all the roster except 3 players to I want to win the championship, you're going to have to hit on all those things. And I think they did a great job in free agency, but that was just not theoretical because they actually made those transactions, but the assessment of that is theoretical. We won't really know how good this year's free agency was until we start seeing it applicable to the games and to the team, and we're about to start seeing that, and we start seeing that in the preseason. So I 100% think it matters, because it's going to at least judge and decide, let's say, the first week of games, those first 5 games, what the lineup looks like, what the depth chart looks like, who's playing where. Those decisions are going to be made based off of preseason and training camp and everything that's happening there. That's one of the things to keep an eye out for. And we saw that early today with Monk playing so well. It's like, oh, maybe he should be starting. Maybe he should be. We'll see. We'll see what happens in game 2. The Lakers have mentioned that the Stars will play about 2 games of these, slew of games here. So we'll see. Do they start in the next game? Do they take that game seriously? Do they take the Warriors game seriously? And we'll get into the schedule and what that looks like in a moment. So let me not get ahead of myself. But that's one thing that's one reason why the preseason matters this year. So much turnover, and we need to figure out what the depth chart looks like, at least initially, even if it will likely change. One thing I'm looking for this preseason as well is defense. We lost a lot of great defensive players, and we definitely made decisions towards the offensive side of the ball versus the defensive side of the ball. And, with Russell Westbrook, with Carmelo, with Ariza, it seems like the point was, hey, get guys who can get buckets, and we'll figure out the rest. That seems to be the premise. Give me talent, give me buckets, and then we'll work it out. So how's that going to look with the Lakers now? Having, more of an offensive heavy approach, and you have a defensive minded coach, and can they do well? And I think today the answer is a pretty optimistic one. It looked pretty good, I think, for most of it, and I saw the effort and the energy there from the quote unquote bench players. They seem like they gave a really good effort. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like once we have our starters and how they play. And Vogel's already kind of made some comments like this, like, what would be the number 1 defense? I don't know, and it'll be up to them, and things of that nature, kind of subtly sending the challenge of, hey, this team was a top defensive team the last couple years. I don't know if this iteration will be. They have the talent for it, so let's see if they give the effort. So I really like that aspect of Frank Vogel still challenging them, and we'll see. Again, very early, and they gave up a lot of points today, but like I said, that was a lot of garbage time minutes. So we'll see what the energy is like and what the defense is like once we have the full roster and all the stars playing, and that's definitely something I'm looking for. I want to know, is this team going to actually play good defense and be consistent, or will they be playing those games where they beat the Pelicans 142 to 125 and it's kind of ugly basketball, but they just have enough offense to overwhelm teams? I'll be curious to see, and we're going to start to see a little bit of a preview of that this preseason once we actually have the starters and the stars playing. And I know that the starters and the stars not playing is frustrating and it's annoying, but remember, health is wealth. If we learned one thing from the Lakers last year, is that health is precious, and without it, it doesn't really matter about your roster and your schemes and your ideas. You're not going to be able to execute on them if your best players are not available. The best ability is availability, and even though it's frustrating or maybe annoying or bums you out that you don't see all the star players in all these games, it's a successful preseason if everyone's healthy going into game 1 of the regular season. I would consider it successful even if they got absolutely blown out in every single game. I would not care at all. I would be like, okay, it didn't look good, but you know what? We're actually going to start playing real games, and let's see what the team looks like then. So that's something to remember here. Health is wealth, and ultimately that's the goal. Can you learn a little bit about the starting lineup? Organize your depth chart, at least for the beginning. See what the team's like offensively. See what the team's like defensively. And be healthy. If you're able to get all that data, all that information during the preseason, and you're also able to walk away from it healthy, I mean, that's great. That's exactly what every team wants. Every team just wants a fair shot and a fair opportunity to show what you can do with a healthy roster, and the Lakers are no different. That's the goal. So game 1, everyone's healthy. I consider that a success, and we got some information, some nuggets on the players, and learned a little bit more about what they're like on this team versus just looking at old tape of them on previous destinations. All right, so let's head into the final segment. Let's talk about the games that are happening this week. We have a grand total of 3 games, so I'm going to count Sunday as part of the week. I don't know how all of you are with your weeks. Some people like to count Monday through Saturday. Some people like to do Sunday to Saturday. I'm a Sunday to Saturday guy. I just decided that's how most calendars work, so I'm just going to go by them. So I consider Sunday the beginning of the week, which some people think is weird. And for this podcast, I'm going to consider it, since it's a weekly podcast, Monday's the start of the week. So I want to talk to you and preview all games happening before Monday, because Monday morning the episodes drop, so a Monday afternoon game, won't be affected or anything like that. So I want to do everything up until the upcoming Sunday that's about to happen. So from here to there, we got 3 basketball games to talk about. So let's get into them. The first one's going to be on Wednesday, October 6th, against the Phoenix Suns. Yes, a first round matchup. So obviously that's going to already have a lot of storylines and excitement and intrigue. And one really cool thing is the Phoenix Suns moved their game down to 3 p.m. PST. It was originally going to be at 6 o'clock PST, but they moved it down to 3 because the Phoenix Mercury are playing in the WNBA semifinals, and if they didn't change their time, they would have to play somewhere else. They really wouldn't have a home game in that sense, and it was really cool. I think it was a class act from the Phoenix Suns to say, hey, you're playing in the biggest games of your season. We want to support you. We're going to make sure that you have all your accommodations, and we'll move our things around so you can have your game where you feel comfortable at your home court without having to, be somewhere else. So kudos to the NBA, the Phoenix Suns, and everyone who kind of helped make that happen, because the Phoenix Mercury have been playing really, really well in WNBA playoffs. If you haven't been watching, download the app, go watch it. It's on ESPN, ESPN2, and they've been playing really well. They have a chance in their series to close it out on Wednesday. I'm really happy that they're going to be at home, so they have a chance to do so. So following that, they're going to have games kind of every other day after that. So they have that Wednesday game against the Suns, and then they play October 8th, which is Friday, against the Golden State Warriors. So it's another Cali Classic. That's going to be at 7:30 West Coast, Best Coast time. One of those games I think we're going to get at max potential between the Suns game and the Golden State Warriors game. Frank Vogel hasn't really talked about it yet, so hopefully we get an answer earlier than just like the night before the game or something, but we'll see what happens. But I think one of those games we're going to see like the full roster play. I think it's likely to be I think I'm going to go with the Suns game, because then what they can do is they can space it out and they can have October 12th, which we're not going to talk about today as much, but October 12th can be the other game where they take it quote-unquote seriously. So I think they want to space out those games too so they can get some rest. But anyway, that's the next game after the Suns game on Friday. They're going to play the Warriors at 7:30 PST. And then the final game of the week is the Lakers versus the Phoenix Suns. Again, that's right, again, they play on Sunday at 6:30 PST. So a lot of the same kind of games. I think that's to kind of reduce travel and kind of keep you in your region. So the Lakers had their home game against Brooklyn, then they're going to be traveling to Phoenix, which isn't far, and then playing the Warriors. So it's kind of staying in that range. I think that's one of the reasons why they've kind of wanted to reduce travel. Obviously, COVID's still very much a real thing and an issue, so it makes sense to me. And I think it's good the league's kind of still thinking about those things and trying to have the season go on without, too much disruption and without unnecessary travel and long travel, especially during the preseason, which we shouldn't have really long travel at all. So again, just to recap, the Wednesday game against the Suns at 3 p.m. We have the Friday game against the Warriors at 7:30, and we have the Sunday game again against the Suns at 6:30. Those are the upcoming Lakers games happening, and hopefully you're excited. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the team is developing and how these role players play along with whenever the stars come out, and obviously then we'll get a lot of really, really good information on what the roster is going to look like and how Frank Vogel sees the roster, because sometimes how he sees it and how I see it or how we see it might be a little different. So I'll be really interested to see the nuances there and the discrepancies. But that's the end of the first game of the preseason, and that's the end of the first official episode of the Lakers Takes podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so excited to continue doing this, and I'll talk to you next week. Go Lakers.